Roll call, please.
Boulder,
Here.
Marr,
Here.
Smithback,
Here.
Meyer,
Here.
Molzon,
Here.
Glish,
Here.
Schnelly,
Here.
Dano,
Here.
and Wojcicki is absent.
All right, thank you. Before I move on, item 7C has been withdrawn for the evening, correct? So we will not be dealing with that this evening. Okay? Move on to approval of minutes of January 5th, 2023. Do we have a motion to approve? We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second.
Who was first?
John.
John
Okay, a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is public appearances. This is part of the agenda. The public is to provide, can provide information to the planning commission, including items both on and off the agenda. You have something you want to talk to us about, you can. This allows us to, the commission can receive the information, ask questions, and we can't give any real advice on it. Is there anybody here for that purpose? No? Okay, thank you. Move on. Communication, miscellaneous business, none. Unfinished business, none. New business. Item 7A, further discussion and consider recommendations of the village board for a general development plan. 221 Haler Court, applicant, Pivotal Point Acupuncture and Wellness, LLC.
All right. I'll take most of this one, and I
Yep.
think Fran's here just to back up in case there's any questions or additions she wants to have. So obviously, we discussed this last meeting in January, and one of the conditions that you all had was that you were comfortable granting the flexibilities to Fran and her business, but limiting the flexibilities just to her and her business rather than to the address, to the parcel, and having that continue forward. So after the meeting, I did speak with Village Attorney Matt Jorgney just about what his recommendation would be to have craft that language in the ordinance to have that carry forward, how would we track that, et cetera. And after some back and forth discussion, we determined that that would not be, that was not his recommendation to kind of move forward with that condition for a variety of reasons. And hopefully you had some time to read my memo, but I'll just kind of breeze through these. Essentially, it shouldn't matter if Fran is operating an acupuncture business out of her home under this approved set of rules or flexibilities, or if it's a future owner operating, you know, an insurance agency or their chiropractor or hairdresser or anything. They should have the same impact in the neighborhood. We don't treat conditional use permits in this way where, you know, Joe can operate his car repair shop, but John can't. So it's more of a, you know, kind of a discrimination type thing, and also just it's focused on the use and rather than on the user. Some other concerns that Matt had about that particular condition, vested rights concern. So once the zoning is in place, the right to use the property is a vested right. Under traditional vested rights analysis, if the zoning changes in the future, the property may still be used in accordance with the earlier vested zoning and be a legal non-conforming use. Again, there's possible discrimination concerns. Perhaps somebody buys the home in the future, they want to operate a business out of that property in the same way, same impact to the neighborhood, but they happen to be a person of color. It can be obviously tricky to navigate that. Also, just complications tracking the change of ownership in the future. Who will be here at the village in the future to monitor the change? What if the underlying zoning district, that single family zoning district, SR4 that she's in now, doesn't exist in its current form in the future? Kind of what would it revert to? So for a variety of reasons, we determined that maybe the best thing to do would be, rather than having her flexibilities worded the way they were in January, which was very open-ended, instead revise the flexibilities requested to limit them to really what Fran needs here. And this would continue forward with whoever operates the property, but again, or owns the property. Again, it may be that no one operates a business out of this home in the future. But if they did, it should, again, have the same impact to the neighborhood. So I spoke with Fran about these, and she was comfortable with these changes. So I've changed the wording a little bit for these zoning flexibilities requested. So the first one would be that square footage flexibility to have no more than 35% of the finished floor area of the home be dedicated to the business use. Before, that was worded as she could have more than 30%, which is what's allowed by right. And so that could really be, she could have 95% of the home, you know, so the business self. That didn't really make sense the more I thought about it. And then the second one I changed was the employee count flexibility. So by right, she's allowed one non-resident employee. So we worded this a little bit to say allow no more than 3 non-resident employees, which is her current business model, and she doesn't expect to grow beyond that. So I think this allows more limits on the expanded home occupation use than how it was worded back in January. Again, it doesn't have a tie to this particular owner or business, but I think legally that's something that, again, isn't recommended. It can be very difficult to track and can lead into some other concerns. So I haven't heard from any of the neighbors specifically that they were concerned with these changes after the packet was published, but happy to answer any questions, and obviously Fran's here to answer any follow-up questions. But this was not a request on her part to come back. It's not an expansion of any request. This is on us, just more of a wording clerical change.
Or aren't we being a little more restrictive in this case?
Right.
So I don't see why we'd have any issues with the rest of the public in that area or the neighbors. So, okay. Anybody have any questions?
I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, I don't understand, and I apologize for having to make you go through this again.
Yeah.
I think that, and I'm not a lawyer, but the GDP is a process that's set up to have changes that are very specific.
Right.
And ask for extenuating circumstances. And if the lawyer is worried about discrimination because we'd be granting flexibilities to you and not to somebody else, then the whole GDP process would be in violation of discrimination. Secondly, as far as tracking this, since we have made this an ownership to the ownership of the property, as soon as the change of ownership of that property were to happen, the very essence of what we've agreed to would dissolve and everything would canter back to what is permitted by right. So there is no tracking that's needed. And the last thing about the vested interest in under the zoning code, again, since it's tracked with the ownership instead of the property itself, it would dissolve as soon as the ownership would change. I'm not getting where he's coming from on this. And
Okay.
Go ahead.
Sure. No, and again, I'm not a lawyer either, so this is secondhand through Matt, who wasn't. He's not in town this evening, so he wasn't able to join us. But a couple of things.
Well, we paid him to do it. So
Right, yeah. So with the, you know, your first point about kind of just the GDP process. So every project, when we have a GDP, is the specific project, specific set of conditions on the site and the plan and everything. But let's say the Lakestone Apartments, the Prairie Brook, for example, you know, that had a series of flexibilities for building height, density, parking count. I don't remember all of them, but we didn't restrict that GDP just to Lakestone, just to the Prairie Brook Apartments. So 40 years in the future, that could change ownership. That could change, you know, the property management company, and that GDP is still going to be in place because it's about the use and that specific building and where it falls on the site and the uses that are requested. So we don't tie other GDPs to ownership. It's about the site and the use and the kind of bulk and, you know, the space it takes up on the site, the appearance of the building, those types of things. So
Agreed, but usually in those situations, the property is owned by a corporation, and the corporation can change ownership. I understand that.
Mhm.
In this instance, it's a privately held residence.
Mhm.
It's not owned by a corporation. Unless you're gonna make an LLC ownership of it, it's not gonna change. So I'm in support of whatever we need to do to help this woman get her project going.
So wide.
It just seems so
Yeah.
wrong to have her go through this again when it doesn't hold water to me.
yeah, I also asked Matt about, you know, what are the tools that are in place to kind of track this when a change in ownership would happen. Say it's 35 years from now. Hopefully I'm retired. Hopefully all of you are not on the planning commission anymore.
Oh.
Maybe, but Greg's still gonna be here, but, there's, the property could change hands and, we often don't know when private property sales happen. There could be something at the Register of Deeds, and we talked about what if there was a deed restriction or something that pops up, a title company is doing a search when she's selling her home. But he said, that is one mechanism that's in place, but again, there's these other questions about what if the underlying zoning changes, what if it reverts back to something else and we change how single-family zoning is set up? The vested rights concerns of, again, say Fran operates her business here for 20 more years and it never has an impact on, a negative impact on the neighborhood. There's not concerns that are raised. Somebody buys the property, they use it for another home occupation type business, they're a lawyer, insurance agent, or whatever. They could make an argument, even though this whole decision, and conversations happening in 2023, they could make an argument 20, 30 years from now that how is what I'm proposing to do here on this property going to really change what Fran's done here on this property for the last 20 years. So that was my take on Matt's argument. Yes, I was very frustrated that I had to call Fran again and say that we need to go back through this process. We didn't need to hold another public hearing because, again, her use hasn't really changed, her request hasn't changed. It's more just this wording. I think I'm taking this as a bit of a lesson in that when we, if you have a discussion about tying this to ownership, I think we need to tread lightly and maybe have Matt come back to a future meeting when he's available and he can explain that better than I
I
can.
think that would be good.
Yeah.
So similarly, I don't have an issue, whatever works for Fran, let's make it happen.
Yep.
The question I have is why, what is interest is in there in limiting the number of employees? What we care about is how many employees are present at any given time. I don't care if you have 5 employees, 10 employees that are working part-time. So it seems an awkward limitation that shouldn't be in there.
Yeah, the way it's worded in the zoning code, it just says, limited to no more than 1 non-resident employee. It doesn't say at any given time.
Okay.
So that would be my interpretation of the zoning code, is to have no more than 3 non-resident employees there at any given time. Because I think the idea is you don't have 20 employees parked there out on the
Right.
street. So if that was ever a question with this business or any other business, I would say, maybe somebody is a hairstylist and they have a receptionist, but they have 2 people that work part-time. I would say that would still be okay as long as, they weren't there at the same time, because it should just be one. The whole idea with home occupation is it's supposed to limit the impact on a neighborhood, still keep a neighborhood feel. So yeah, that would be my answer. If anyone had a question, say, wait a second, I know that she's got 4 employees. Well, there's only 3 there at any given time, and that's like a rare scenario that they would all be there at the same time.
So because it's not in the zoning code stating that, you're not in support of adding that language present at any given time?
I think that'd be more of a zoning code change, not a
Okay.
GDP.
We
language.
couldn't
But
do
yeah,
it.
we're up for
We
quite a
couldn't do
few.
that now?
No, that's a separate
Okay.
text amendment public hearing process. But we are about to do quite a few zoning text amendments for fencing and some affordable housing type things. So I could certainly add that to the list.
I was
if
gonna say, it
that's,
might be worth adding for
Yep.
future consideration, just to avoid
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah,
Good idea.
just the clarification. Yep. So thank you for that.
So, any more questions? We're looking for a motion recommending the village board approval of the general development plan, including the proposed flexibilities, which include square footage flexibility to have no more than 35% of the finished floor area of the home to be dedicated to the business use, and item B, employee count flexibility to allow no more than 3 non-resident employees. Correct? So we need that motion.
I'll make that motion.
Do you make the motion?
I'll second it.
We have a second. Is there any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Fran.
Thank you.
For hanging in there with us.
All right. Move on to extraterritorial jurisdiction review of a certified survey map, property at Highway 14, Town of Rutland. And, go ahead.
Sure. So we do have the applicants here tonight to provide a little bit more information about their project. I know we don't typically have applicants for ETJ CSMs come in, but they've been following the process, all the different steps. I think wanted to
Okay.
just see it through so they can give you a little bit more information about their proposed business. But this is a lot off of Highway 14, the town of Rutland, just south of Bucky's Gym, so just a little bit south of the village boundary. The proposal would create 2 lots from one larger parcel, but the smaller parcel, the 2.75 acre parcel, would be rezoned to heavy commercial and be developed into self-storage units, and then the remaining parcels remain as ag use. This has already been through Rutland, Dane County zoning, and the Dane County board for their approval, so we're the last signature typically on this. So this is the proposed CSM. I didn't get it in time to put in the packet, but I did get a review letter from the village engineer, and he didn't have any comments.
Okay.
So if you all would like to come up and say anything, otherwise you can just stay there and be available to answer questions.
As long as you
Up
came
to
down, you might as well tell us what you're gonna do. Because actually, what we normally do on situations like this is, since the county doesn't have a problem and all that, is we simply don't take opposition to it, is what normally happens. But go ahead.
That would be just fine with us.
That's what's gonna happen. That's what's gonna happen.
We've jumped a lot
Okay.
of hoops to get
Okay.
here.
But we might as well hear what you're gonna do, so we aren't curious.
Well, if you had a chance to look through the complete packet, it seems quite longer than we anticipated having to put together, but this was a parcel of land that is in Rutland, and what we have asked for and received is to get 2.756 acreage to be zoned commercial. It currently has an existing large pole building and 30 by 30 pole building, more like a garage facility. And when we purchased it, it was in quite an extent of disarray, a lot of broken things and old rusted metal and remains of trailers and an empty pit where there was a home at one time that was since being used to burn things and throw rubbish into. And so we have made it our pride and joy to take it and re-beautify what was there. It's a beautiful piece of land. The area that we're working within is the area where the buildings were. Behind that is a wooded area, and one part of it is agriculture, which will remain agriculture. We have a farmer who's renting that field. And we'd like to add 2 more 40 by 80, one's a 40 by 80, one's a 32 by 80 pole building, as you can see in the one map, and another couple smaller buildings. What we presented to Rutland was something kind of trendy that's happening with shipping containers. And strangely enough, I heard in the news this morning, there's a news segment on coming up in the Alliant Energy presentation that happens weekly about what's happening with shipping containers in our state and how they're being refurbished and reutilized. And so we thought the one set of pictures I believe you got shows the idea we got from an area in Baraboo and how they took shipping containers and made them into something very nice for storage, and that's what we proposed initially. And we put 4 there, as you can see there. Yes, thank you. We put 4 there and painted them, and then around them would be a wall and a roof on the top, so it would look like a building. Rutland was not in favor of that, so this has been a long process for us, but we have finally received their approval. As long as we put buildings there, they don't mind if we put pole buildings or if we put individual mini warehouses there, but we will not be using the steel containers. We did move forward through the county with that. So you can see there in the pictures, the first 4 pictures, I believe there are 4, show what the property looked like initially, what we started with. And we have since worked with DOT to relocate the driveway for safety. It's been moved 200, is it yards, feet? Feet down, widened and extended, and we have begun emptying the buildings, which were full of a lot of things. Strangely enough, no one believed there was business going on there with tractors and bicycles and car parts, but we sure found a lot of remnants of parts and shelving and file cabinets and things that we've removed. Begun painting the buildings. We are trying to maintain the rural look, trying to make the buildings a charcoal gray, darker roofs, white trim, and the new buildings that would come in would look similar. Those are the lights. Dave has worked to create solar lighting there, and that creates more of the ambient look and downward facing, which was required in the zoning. So we are just continuing to work on that. Landscaping is really important to us. It's a beautiful property. We would like to, at some point, add shrubbery, flowering trees, really make it a nice green space out there, because there will be really few buildings and a lot of green space. So we'd like to accent that and make it a nice look. Rutland feels very strongly that that area is a focal point as you enter Rutland. And in reading portions of the Village of Oregon Comprehensive Plan, I see that the village feels very much the same. That's an entryway into the community. And I've been a part of the community for 32 plus years and very proud of our village, and we want to meet both the village's feeling and the Rutland Township's feeling that we want a nice entryway and a nice location. And so we will continue to look at the landscaping, but we have to place the buildings and know how that's all going to factor in first.
Okay. It's gonna look nice.
Very good, yep, so.
Yeah, I can't believe how much work you've gone through, and you've got everybody to approve, so now you're waiting just on us. And what, again, what we're gonna do is, what we've done typically in the past, since there's nothing that's out of the ordinary for us that you're doing, we simply go along and say that we don't take any exception or any oppose anything you're doing at it, so. We have a motion that we do that, so we have a motion to take no exception to this extraterritorial jurisdiction.
I'd make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, that motion carries. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I think I mentioned, Lisa, this will be on our February 13th village board meeting. So that'll be the final step, and you're welcome to come. Probably don't need to give the whole story
No.
there, but yeah, that's usually kind of the last rubber stamp.
Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you, and
Thank
thanks
you.
for your help.
You're welcome.
You're welcome. Yeah, take care.
Does the highway, now that you're done and whatever, does the Highway 14, if and when that ever goes 4-lane, does that go further towards the east?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. No more new business. Status of development projects. We're not gonna have anything upcoming meetings, dates. We have a joint meeting next Monday with the village board. I will not be here. I apologize. I'm sorry. I will be on my way to Texas for a little
John, will you
vacation.
be here to
You'll be taking
gather
care
the
of it?
troops?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um,
And then, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Nope, just gonna say that it's right at the top of the meeting agenda. I don't know if you got the email link sent out by Candy yesterday, but yeah, so we'll get you guys in and out. That we have one set of comp plan amendments that needed to jump ahead of the whole comp plan update schedule. So those will be back at your April 13th meeting for the public hearing, but that's for Autumn Ridge phases 3 through 5, and then I didn't get a chance to add it on here, but we did get a request in the Oregon Park duplexes area, which we're all familiar with. A builder bought 4 lots, and they'd like to do, he called them 2 flats, but they're 4 units on one duplex parcel, so kind of over under small units. And I explained that would be a comp plan amendment, a DDP revision, and he wanted to move forward. So obviously, all those comp plan amendments are taken, kind of one at a time too. So we'll at least start the public participation process, and get the letters out and everything, but have a little bit more explanation. I'll have, site plan maps and explanation from the builder a little bit on how that would work. So those are coming up, and then the kickoff for the comp plan and the park plan will be with the board. So just a couple resolutions we'll go through, and then Sonia from Vanderwall will kind of give the big picture overview. We have a couple dates set now for focus groups and a public kind of kickoff meeting in March, so she'll share some information about that now too.
Okay. Busy.
Mm-hmm.
All right, planning staff meetings, the 11th and the 25th of January, already happened. No items for the future meetings I can see of. We need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
You have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everyone.
It'll jump right out. But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, and that frog